Hey all you cool theater cats and kittens! Welcome to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonani, and today I'm sharing with you my top 10 heartbreakers of the last 10 years. It seems that almost every single year for the last 10 years, there's been one Broadway show that I really fall in love with, but audiences and or critics just don't agree. I was lucky enough to see all the shows on this list multiple times with one exception.
Show off.
And in my humble opinion, they all deserved much better.
So much better, so much better.
Now, it's not a complete list, of course. There are shows every season that I really enjoy, but just don't seem to find their audience. Also, I limited the list to shows that played under 200 performances. So without further ado, let's jump into my top 10 heartbreakers of the last 10 years, Part 1, which I'll list in chronological order from oldest to newest.
So here it is, Part 1.
The first show on the list is Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, which opened at the Bernard B. Jacobs Theatre on October 13th, 2010, and closed January 6, 2011 after 94 performances and 26 previews.
Populism, yeah, yeah. Populism, yeah, yeah. Populism, yeah, yeah. The age of Jackson, the age of Jackson, the age of Jackson, the age of Jackson, the age of. This is the age of Jackson.
It had music by Michael Friedman and book by Alex Timbers, who of course also directed. Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson told the mostly true story of the political rise of populist President Andrew Jackson. And this one is actually a bit of a shocker to me that it failed so hard on Broadway.
Failed?
It started, as a lot of shows do nowadays, off-Broadway, where it was a big, highly praised hit.
So I thought it was terrific.
It opened at the public in March of 2010 and was extended 3 times before eventually ending its run there. And at the time, it was even the Public Theater's second highest grossing production of all time. It was the hot new show in town that everyone was talking about. And there seemed to be no question that it was going to transfer to Broadway, which of course it did. The young ensemble cast for the show was absolutely hysterical. And star Benjamin Walker in the title role, he was charming. He was very sexy pants, as the show might say. And he even got a little scary. I also have to mention how amazing the set was for this show. Not only on the stage, but they transformed the whole inside of the theater into this weirdly sexy, slightly macabre punk explosion of lights and taxidermy. It was freaking awesome.
It really blew my mind.
And though just like off-Broadway, the reviews were excellent, audiences just were baffled by the show. I think it's because of the satirical, lowbrow humor. It was really ahead of its time. I think if Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson had opened during the Trump era, it would have been a much bigger, even more controversial hit.
So we'll ruin the bank, and we'll cripple the courts, and we'll take on the world for America's sake. And we'll take all the land, and we'll take back the country. We'll take, and we'll take, and we'll take, and we'll take.
Next up, we have Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde opened at the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater on December 1st, 2011, and closed that same month on December 30th. It played just 36 performances and 33 previews, the shortest on this list.
Every place that we go, folks will turn their heads. They'll be hollering from Dodge to Denver. We are the pair that we'll discuss. Yes, this world will remember us.
It had music by Frank Wildhorn, lyrics by Don Black, and book by Ivan Menchel. And unlike Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, critics did not care for this show.
It stinks.
You could argue that this show was destined to fail from the beginning because of one name attached to it, Frank Wildhorn. The composer has, I don't think, ever had a show on Broadway that critics have actually liked. His shows seem to just get like an automatic pan.
Seriously, these reviews are terrible.
I think, and I know he's watching this, I think Frank Wildhorn should write a show, not put his name on it at all.
Ooh, anonymous, sexy.
See what the reviews are like, and then afterwards reveal that he was the composer. I think it'd be very interesting. And while his other shows are not among my all-time favorites, His music is often beautiful and exciting, and this show in particular, I think that that's the case. To be honest, I think he just picks lousy lyric writers.
Girl, the shade of it all.
Bonnie and Clyde, given the period and setting, obviously has a country music feel to it. If the producers were smart, they would have had some big-name country music stars record pop versions of some of the songs from the show. I think that would have actually done really well and brought in a whole new audience.
Come on to the theater!
I mean, could you imagine like Faith Hill and Tim McGraw doing The World Will Remember Us, or like Reba McEntire, and I don't know a lot of country music people. But anyway, the cast for Bonnie and Clyde was pretty astounding. Laura Osnes and Jeremy Jordan as the title characters were so compelling. They sounded unbelievable. If you haven't heard the cast recording, definitely give it a listen. I really hope these two work together on Broadway again soon. They could do so many shows. Also, Clybourne Elder and Melissa Vanderschiff as Clyde's brother Buck and his wife were definitely standouts as well. Okay, crazy conspiracy theory time. Bonnie and Clyde, I think, could have run just a little bit longer, maybe found its audience, but Disney was transferring Newsies from Paper Mill Playhouse later that same season. Jeremy Jordan originated Jack and Newsies as well as Clyde and Bonnie and Clyde, and I know Disney really wanted him for Newsies in the spring. I'm just saying, could Disney be the real killers of Bonnie and Clyde?
The world may never know.
Next up is the only revival to make this list. It's the last revival of The Mystery of Edwin Drood. It opened November 13th, 2012 at Studio 54. Okay, now I know what some of you are thinking already. Wasn't that a roundabout show?
It was.
Yes, it was.
Doesn't that mean it was a limited run?
Technically, yes, but...
Come on. Any of the non-profit shows on Broadway, if they're big enough hits, can extend indefinitely or transfer houses. They did it with Light in the Piazza, they did it with Warhorse, Time Stands Still, Venus in Fur, The 39 Steps, so many more. I don't buy it.
Okay, you've made your point.
The musical itself is incredible. It has book, music, and lyrics by Rupert Holmes, and is, of course, based on the unfinished Charles Dickens novel.
Charles Dickens.
And since there's no official ending to the story, the audience every single night gets to vote on who they want the killer to be, as well as other aspects, and the cast has to perform that special ending that night. Because of the complexity of the show, I mean, it's got like 30 plus endings, for goodness sakes, and large cast requirements, it's not really done much regionally, at least as often as other Tony Award winning musicals do.
Never heard of it.
The cast roundabout assembled for this revival is astounding. You have Stephanie J. Block absolutely killing it in the title role, no pun intended, and she's leading the cast that has Will Chase, Betsy Wolfe, Jesse Mueller, Andy Carl, Greg Edelman, Jim Norton, and, oh yeah, Cheetah freaking Rivera.
Come on!
And though it won great reviews, some of the best reviews of any show that season, it was only extended one time, then closed as scheduled after, I think, 136 performances and 26 previews.
Well, that sucks.
2012 was one of those rare double heartbreak years for me. Chaplin the Musical opened at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre on September 10th, 2012 and closed on January 6th, 2013 after just 135 performances and 24 previews. This is a very special show to me, very near and dear to my heart. I actually managed the merchandise for this show.
Merchandising!
Which is not why it's so special to me, but it was really the first show that I got to see from dress rehearsal through first preview, through opening night, through closing night, and it was so special to me to get to watch that whole process of a brand new show evolve and change and grow.
Bloom and grow forever.
For someone who not only really loves musicals, but loves how musicals are made.
You do Fosse, Fosse, Fosse. You do Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha Graham. Or Twyla, Twyla, Twyla. Or Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael.
That was really something very special. And I genuinely loved the show. Also, my buddy Rob McClure played the title character, and seeing him become the Broadway star I knew he was meant to be, we all knew he was meant to be, was really something special. His performance of Charlie Chaplin was extraordinary, especially the scene where he first becomes that tramp character was something I will never forget. In 2014, The Last Ship sailed to Broadway and I fell in love. The Last Ship opened on October 26, 2014 and closed January 24th after 105 performances and 29 previews.
And what do you got? What do we got? Now what have you got? What have we got? You got out. We got out else. Hey, what do you got? What do we got? What do you got? What do we got? You got out. We got out else.
It had a score by legendary rocker Sting and a book by John Logan and Brian Yorkey. I was not super excited for this show when it was first announced. It's the story of a shipbuilder's son who returns to the small town he grew up in many years later. And this whole town revolves around the shipyard and shipbuilding, and it's being shut down. All this in the northeast of England. So it really didn't sound like a rollicking good time at the theater, to be honest. But I actually found the show to be incredibly exciting and beautiful and moving, but critics and audiences just were not on board.
Not this ship, sister.
A lot of the criticism I remember hearing was that they found it boring, or that they just couldn't connect to the story of these Northeast England shipbuilders. And I call total BS on that.
That is one big pile of shit.
I mean, can you connect to a story of an orphan girl being adopted by the richest man in the world, or a con man in 1912 Iowa? I don't think so. So, settle down.
Simmer down now.
And despite Sting himself jumping into the show, who was excellent, by the way, I got to see him do it, the Last Ship just, well, it sank. It sank far too soon. And that ends part 1 of my top 10 heartbreakers. Did any of the shows on the list break your heart too? Your favorite musical not make the list? Let me know down in the comments, and go ahead and hit subscribe and click that notification bell so you'll know when part 2 drops. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mark Benani. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you next time.